What did Lady Jessica actually think when she chose to bear a son? Her defiance of the Bene Gesserit plan sparked a cascade of consequences. Actually choice think when she chose to bear a son, desperation, or her defiance of the Bene records remain. The order demanded a daughter to complete their genetic design. Paul's birth fractured their careful symmetry. Was it rebellion, a miscalculation, or had Mohiam's hidden hand already moved pieces into place? The Bene Gesserit's Kwisatz Haderach was never just a tool. It was a lever, or had Jessica's Mohiam's sin became its hidden hand already fulcrum? A choice that fractured the Bene Gesserit's plan. Not all secrets are broken by time, some are folded into it. The golden path, a prison of prescience, now bends to Mohiam's unseen hand. What if the God Emperor's shadow is not his own? What if the Order's greatest weapon was always its own betrayal? Who holds the thread when the weaver is bound? The vial's chill pressed against Baron Harkonnen's lips. A syrupy tang coated his throat. Mohiam watched, stillsuit hissing as spice dust clung to her collar. His girth bloated like a waterlogged ship, robes straining, breath rattling a drumbeat of weakness. She had sown the seed in his wine, a slow unraveling. Lady Jessica's hands trembled on the birth chamber's cold stone. Blood and musk filled the air, stillsuit clinging to her sweat. The Bene Gesserit's command echoed, daughter, but the child's cry rang male, a blade through their plan. She hid Paul's face, pulse hammering. What have I wrought? At the banquet, spice-laced wine steamed in gilded goblets. Mohiam's fingers traced the edge of a whisper, the Baron's corruption, Jessica's defiance. The Order's grand design curved toward her own shadow. A trap woven in silence, thread by thread, she smiled. The Kwisatz Haderach was never the prize. Word count 151. The Gom Jabbar's blade cut deeper than Mohiam's orders allowed. Paul's breath hitched. The test was not a filter, it was a key. She had threaded his agony with a pattern only she could decode. The Bene Gesserit sought a weapon. Mohiam forged a puppet. A truthsayer's gift is not just to read lips but to plant them. In the boy's trembling flesh, she wove a hunger that would outlast centuries. When he became emperor, his wrath would echo her silent design. The pain of the test, a prophecy, the pain he would unleash, her harvest. The Order called her loyal. They did not see the trap in their own ritual. Every Gom Jabbar was a needle. Every subject a vessel for her will. She did not betray the Bene Gesserit. She became their blind spot. Their grand design for the Kwisatz Haderach, a canvas for her shadow. Paul's ascension was never about their plan, it was about her. The God Emperor's crown forged in the fire of her calculus. Pause, let the weight settle. The Bene Gesserit's greatest secret was not the Harkonnens. Not the spice, not even the male. It was the elder truthsayer who turned their scripture into a snare. And the world burned as she knew it would. Word count 265. The archives do not lie. Irulan's ink-stained fingers shaped empires, her history's binding truth to the Sisterhood's design. Yet beneath her careful prose, a single name recurs: Mohiam, not as mentor, not as antagonist, as curator. The elder truthsayer did not merely train Paul Atreides, she scripted the legend that would outlive him. Consider the chronicles, Dune's rise, its fall, the messianic arc. Every victory, every atrocity, framed through a lens polished by the very hand that first tested his blood. How many generations of Bene Gesserit studied Irulan's accounts without questioning the editor? The Kwisatz Haderach was meant to unify their order. Mohiam's gambit aimed higher. She weaponized memory itself, ensuring the Sisterhood's sins remained shrouded beneath the heroism of others. Paul's jihad, his betrayal, these were not errors in the plan, they were annotations, a labyrinth where even the architects might lose themselves. What does it mean when the chronicler holds the knife? The Sisterhood seeks gods to rule them. Mohiam found a scribe willing to make them. And in the silence between truth and story, an entire civilization bent to her will. The books will not say so. But the archives, if you listen, whisper her name. The honored matters emerge as a shadow, in the sand a twisted mirror of the order that spurned them. Refugees reshaped by the Tile-Laxus venom, their bodies lashed with the same rituals that once marked Bene Gesserit initiates. A grotesque echo. Mohiam's hand, or was it her undoing? She fed the Tile-Laxu names, not out of vengeance but calculation. a queen who sowed poison in the garden of her own making. Consider the trap, a Kwisatz Haderach engineered to unite humanity, yet its threads were pulled by a woman who had already lost. Mohiam did not seek a messiah, she sought leverage. A puppet to tighten her grip on the Bene Gesserit's highest councils, while the true cost curdled in the dark. The Tile-Lexu, patient as desert winds, turned her betrayal into a weapon. They wove the honored matters not as enemies, but as inheritance. A century later, the fruits of her ambition rot in the spice. The matters, with their hunger for annihilation, are the final jest in a game of queens. Did Mohiam foresee this? Or was she but a thread in a loom she did not understand? The archives do not say, but the sand remembers. And the sand does not forgive. The Bene Gesserit call it a failure, a detour in their design. Yet every shattered bone, every poisoned womb, whispers otherwise. Mohiam's gambit was never about power, it was about survival. A woman who traded her future to delay the end, a trap set not for the order, but for the universe. And the door, once opened, never closes. Paul Atreides abandoned the imperial throne in Dune Messiah. Mohiam's lifelong project crumbled, a contradiction that shreds the myth of her mastery. She spent centuries weaving the Kwisatz Haderach into a weapon of order, yet the very force she shaped turned to ash in her grasp. How does a puppet master triumph when the puppet refuses the strings? Paul's rejection of the God Emperor's role was no failure. It was an annihilation of her design. The Bene Gesserit bred a messiah to break cycles. Mohiam twisted that same design to crown herself arbiter of fate, but ambition cannot outlast will. If the Kwisatz Haderach rejected godhood, what leverage remained for a single acolyte? The trap she laid for the order became her own noose. Did she foresee this? Did her hunger blind her to the storm she summoned? The throne's abandonment was not the end. It was the first strike in a war against the architects of destiny, and Mohiam, Queen of Shadows, found her crown was paper. The cells of the Bene Gesserit abbey hummed with the cloying scent of myrrh. Jessica's breaths were shallow, her hands trembling on the cold stone as Mohiam's voice wove through her like a blade. Asterisk, you are the fulcrum, asterisk, she whispered, the words sweet as poison. Decades later, in the God Emperor's court, the same myrrh clung to the airthick, suffocating as Paul's fury burned like a fixed star. Mohiam, cloaked in shadow, felt the tremor of his power and knew her sisters would curse her name, but the legacy she shaped would outlast their wrath. A candle sputtered on the dais where she stood, its guttering light casting a face both aged and ageless. She had taught Jessica to bear children, yes, but also to bear witness, to see the threads of her gambit in every choice, every heartbeat. When Paul spoke the forbidden verse, Mohiam's pulse did not falter. She had orchestrated the storm, now she would harvest its wreckage. The court's whispers were a symphony. Asterisk, the Kwisatz Haderach is a myth. Asterisk, asterisk, Mohiam plays God. Asterisk, she let them murmur, let them burn. Her truest pupil was not Paul but the void his reign would carve, where she might plant the seeds of a new order. In the stillness between breaths she wondered, was this hubris, or the final, inevitable stitch in the Bene Gesserit's tapestry? The answer did not matter. The pattern was set. The Bene Gesserit spun their webs across centuries, believing themselves architects of destiny. Yet in their obsession with the Kwisatz Haderach, they carved a keyhole Mohiam's Gambit corridor for a sister to turn the lock from within. She did not seek to break the cycle. She folded into it a cipher in her own design. Prescience, their crowning tool, became her prison's bars. While the order traced bloodlines and bred inevitability, Mohiam traced the cracks in their certainty. A sister became a strategist, a pawn became a gambler. By nurturing rivalries between House Atreides and Harkonnen, she did not merely shape the Kwisatz Haderach, starved the Bene Gesserit of their own future. What is a sage if not a thief of time? What is an order if not a house of mirrors? The wheel does not stop for wisdom, it laughs at it. Mohiam's betrayal was not a fracture but a fulcrum. The Bene Gesserit would always create a monster to guard their gates, never knowing the guardian might one day reclaim the keys. Did they see it in her eyes when she knelt? Did they hear the gears of her gambit in the silence between prayers? Likely. But to unmake what they had built would be to admit the wheel was never theirs to spin, and so it turns, always. The Bene Gesserit bred empires to birth a god, Yet Mohiam's Gambit twisted their own scripture into a snare. What if their Kwisatz Haderach was not a tool but a cage? Leto Roman II ruled 3,500 years to outlast prescient collapse. But what did he bury in that silence? The Order's triumphs reek of ash. Every heir, every war, every whispered prayer, were they building a throne or dismantling one? Mohiam's name is absent from the canon. Yet her shadow curves through every line of the plan. Did she weaponize their own faith to claim the very God they sought to forge? The sands of Arrakis hold no answersonly riddles. The truth is not written, it is unspoken, and it is waiting. The Bene Gesserit bred empires to birth a god, yet Mohiam's Gambit twisted their scripture into a snare. What if their Kwisatz Haderach was not a tool but a cage? Leto Roman II ruled 3,500 years to outlast prescient collapse. But what did he bury in that silence? The Order's triumphs reek of ash. Every heir, every war, every whispered prayer, were they building a throne or dismantling one? Mohiam's name is absent from the canon. Yet her shadow curves through every line of the plan. Did she weaponize their faith to claim the God they sought to forge? The sands of Arrakis hold no answer